For a little bit.
Is he going? All right. Good afternoon. My name is Reece Roberson. I'm here today to show you that Edward de Vere is the true author of Shakespeare's poems and plays. I've researched all about Edward de Vere and Shakespeare to find that Edward de Vere was hiding behind Shakespeare and Shakespeare wasn't the true author. We have studied both sides of the argument and feel pretty confident in the fact that Edward de Vere is the true author. Shakespeare is, this is a little background knowledge, Shakespeare is a famous author of poetry and plays. He was the man known for the great creation of the Globe Theater. The Globe Theater was a big theater that did a bunch of plays back in the day for anyone from peasants to nobles. And Edward de Vere is a man that was from the same time period. He was of a higher class than Shakespeare and highly educated. He was has more proof of being educated than Shakespeare does. This is the issue, is that Edward de Vere was the true author. He needs to get the credit that he deserves. Alright. If you were Edward de Vere and potentially the greatest writer that ever lived, would you still take credit for your own playwrights, even if it destroyed your reputation? People of higher class in this time period were not meant to be playwriters. Playwriters were of a lower class. They weren't around to just entertain the higher class. They weren't meant to be the people that, they weren't meant to be rich people that they had more respect almost or something like that than to write plays. One thing that shows that Edward de Vere would be the true author is that Edward de Vere had really very similar poetry. His poem styles were the same, and they found several poems that had Edward de Vere's name on them that matched up with a lot of what Shakespeare stuff looked like. Another thing is that many of the events in Shakespeare's poems are events very similar to Edward de Vere's life. Especially one thing they found in Hamlet is it talks about a young man falling out of tennis. This is a line in Hamlet believed to be about a time that de Vere was playing tennis with Sydney. I found this information at shakespeareauthorship.org. Another great reason that Edward is the true author is his education. Shakespeare doesn't have any documentation showing that he was educated or that he knew even how to write. But de Vere was a very educated man. He went to school. He went all the way through school, graduated school, and went into law. To go into law in this time period, you had to know what you're doing and be very educated. This was found at absoluteshakespeare.com. One of my last facts that I'll go into is these are just some random things. It's kind of like Edward de Vere was also known to compose and direct and act in plays around the same time as Shakespeare. He was around the theater and kind of did a few things in the theater, just not like big things, just kind of undercover and stuff. In the law room, he was known as Spear Shaker. This was a nickname that they gave Edward de Vere. That's pretty coincidental that his nickname was so close to Shakespeare's. This was all also found at absoluteshakespeare.com. So basically, what I've shown you is that Edward de Vere is the true author, and he needs to get the credit that he deserves.
All right. 3-minute prep time. All 3 minutes.
You have a 3-minute planning time now?
Yeah.
All right. All right. It doesn't shut off. Alright. So,
All we have to do is just wait till.
here's what they're doing. Man, as they say it, like what they're gonna rebut against is, as they say it, we write it down here, and once it's evidence and proof, and then that's what in your time you're gonna come back and say, like, that's what you're gonna argue against.
Hey, she'll be pausing the camera right now.
No, she said pop it.
Alright, so now, let's go why. Why you would have a pseudonym. It says, one like the business that he may have the house was used for court. Right here, this is the best one now. They will judge should remain anonymous and blessed. They gave him greater creative freedom to express truth and power.
Yeah, you bring that up, just be like, yeah, I found this at what website is this? Alright, that's fine.
Shakespeare.
Just bring that up, and then you're also.
You guys ready?
One doing that. Just something.
Reece?
Yeah, we're ready. Whenever.
Alright, so I'm gonna start the clock.
I don't want to pursue.
Oh, that's yours.
All right. There is nothing good or bad, but thinking it makes it so. That's a famous quote by William Shakespeare. Hi, I'm Tanner Cox, and I'm here to contribute my time to backing up William Shakespeare as being the true writer of his plays. Edward de Vere is trying to take credit for one of the greatest writers of all time, William Shakespeare. We've been studying Shakespeare writing for many years, and this imposter is trying to take all the credit for something that he has never accomplished. Alright, well, one of my contentions is, according to the authors of Shakespeare's plays, they stated the hardest part to swallow is that Edward de Vere died in 1604. Two plays were written after the death of de Vere. The plays consisted of The Winter's Tale in 1610 and The Tempest, which was performed in 1609. Shakespeare was still a big role in plays by the year of 1613. The affirmative side may have reasoning behind why they think de Vere was the actual author of Shakespeare's writing. Like they might say that de Vere was very educated enough to write these plays. I have informed that they will prove Shakespeare was very well educated enough to write his own plays. According to the authors of Shakespeare's plays, it states that Shakespeare attended the Stratford School, where they used Greek and Latin, or where the use of Greek and Latin were heavily used. The textbook he used relates to much of the same material Shakespeare refers to. So those who say he can't write like he did out of nowhere are sadly mistaken, because his education was very well in place. All of Shakespeare's plays have his own signature on them, that he is the true writer of them. So I'm really not sure why Edward de Vere showed up out of nowhere, because for many years we've been studying on Shakespeare. Like ever since we were young kids, we read his plays, and we've never heard of Edward de Vere till now. Like he's never showed up. He's never been a part of any of Shakespeare's plays in my eyes. And like the affirmative said that what did they say, that he was that he was very high educated, and that Edward de Vere wrote similar plays to Shakespeare. That doesn't mean that Shakespeare didn't write his own plays. Like Shakespeare could have wrote plays just as well as Edward de Vere did. Well, thank you for your time. I hope you believe that Shakespeare was the true author of his own plays.
We have a 2-minute prep.
Yeah, 2 2 minutes?
Yep. And then next do second pro rebuttal.
Hey, Tammy, we just gonna be using the round table? Or just this? Okay with the calendar thing? You talking through stuff? So it's kind of guys, you got photographs or calendar?
I have this.
So people just need to like their name in, you have a response.
You guys ready?
Can you want to, right?
This 4 minute?
Yeah, while we're doing it.
Yeah, 4 minutes.
That's fine.
See what we can do. Okay. Hi, I'm Colten Williams, and I believe that Edward de Vere was the true playwright for the Shakespeare plays. What Tanner said was the hardest part is Edward died in 1604. That could be possible, but they could have just been published later, and the plays could have been written earlier. He also said that William Shakespeare was well educated. Well, Edward de Vere was very well educated as well. He went to law school, and he was part of the royalty, and Edward de Vere just showed up as their third point. And, well, he apparently did just show up because he was hiding his identity intentionally. That's what he wanted to do. He did not want to take credit for his plays because he, in fact, was royalty, and this would have damaged his reputation. There were a lot of similarities in between the two plays. There were similar characteristics in the certain characters in the plays. On About.com, there was a question, was Shakespeare a pseudonym for Edward de Vere? And there was an interview with Matthew Costellato about the Edward de Vere case, and he was also for the affirmative side. He said, one likely reason that he may well have been prevented from doing so would be the powers at the court. Some other very well proven points were de Vere may have well chosen to remain anonymous and employ a pseudonym because it gave him greater creative freedom and the ability to speak truth to power. If de Vere were revealing embarrassing or even scandalous facts about powerful figures at court, he may have well concluded that discretion was the better part of valor and put his name to his works. He didn't want to damage his reputation, and he wanted to be able to speak freely about his plays, all of his playwrights. And Matthew Costello also said, sometimes I think de Vere was the deep throat of Queen Elizabeth's court. Remember, there was no such thing as freedom of the press in those days. If de Vere's writings could be constructed as critical of the government or specific individuals, especially the Queen, he would not have lasted very long. So that's another reason as to why he might have wanted to keep his identity hidden. And that is some of the reasons why we believe that Edward de Vere is the true author.
So that's 2 minutes, right?
And then we go head to head.
No, he goes on the second tension, and you hit his, not hit, he wasn't hit.
Well, I'm going next on the second corner bottle. Then the first will attack each other, and then me and the second will attack each other.
Isn't it a head to head now on the rebuttal?
No, not yet. It's my turn.
Oh.
Based on what you guys said.
Okay. And then we get it right. Are we on 4?
After this, so after Joe goes, we go head to head.
You ready? All right, I'm gonna go, fellas.
We can't confuse.
Okay, so basically the hardest part to swallow for me, for those who support De Vere, is that De Vere died in 1604. Shakespeare, he had later plays such as The Winter's Tale in 1610, and many more books were published after De Vere's death. One thing I don't understand that the affirmative said was, they said that De Vere liked to speak freely and write freely. If he wanted to be so free and have no worries, then why does he have a fake name in Shakespeare, supposedly? Also, I'd like to talk about some of their evidence they said they were talking about was based off background knowledge. Background knowledge to me isn't that very great, I don't think. I like my knowledge on paper. Shakespeare was well educated. His school was one of the top in the country then. He wrote many plays that he participated in. So like De Vere, Shakespeare, he a lot of his plays he wrote, he was in, like he was an actor in them plays. So De Vere wasn't even thought of during the plays. Another thing I want to talk about is how they are trying to say that a lot of the writing's similar. Shakespeare went to a very unique school, so his writing's very unique. On this information right here, Shakespeare authorship, it said that Shakespeare went to a very unique school where he learned very unique English and literature. So one thing I don't understand is how De Vere has similar writing to Shakespeare if this website says Shakespeare had very unique learning environment around him. Basically, that's all I got for now.
All right, so now we have 2 minutes. And then do we go head to head or?
Say all his information on
Now I'm supposed to go just for 2 minutes off of what Joe said.
No. Oh,
it. And then I go 2 minutes off you, you go 2 minutes off me, and we shake hands and then it's over.
Okay.
you guys need more time?
No, we're ready.
Alright. Alright, so one of their points that they brought up that they keep bringing up is about how the plays came out after Edward de Vere's death, but this isn't even a valid point because there's no way that the plays couldn't have been already written and then after de Vere's death they were performed. That doesn't even make sense because there's ways for a guy to write plays that haven't been on the stage yet. Another thing that they said was Shakespeare's well educated. Just because he's well educated doesn't mean that he can write. Shakespeare, there's a lot of well educated people out there that don't know how to write, and de Vere has poetry with his name on it that is very similar and very well written out there that they have proof of. And they said one thing Shakespeare did was played in his own plays, but there is proof out there that de Vere actually played in some plays and was around directing plays. He was just kind of undercover because a higher nobleman wasn't supposed to be doing things like that at the time. It was kind of frowned upon. And then they said why would he hide behind Shakespeare's name if he wanted to be free? He didn't want to be free. He wanted to be free in what he said and not get in trouble for what he said. So behind somebody else's name, you can say whatever you'd like, and then you aren't the blame or the people that don't like you anymore isn't coming back to you. It's going back to Shakespeare. So I think we've proven that Edward de Vere is the true author, and he needs to get the credit for what he deserves.
One meeting prep time.
Two.
One meeting right here.
Yeah, whenever you're good.
Hi, I'm still a strong believer of Shakespeare still writing.
Good afternoon. Just a reminder to staff, we have a faculty meeting upstairs at 1:45. And students, that means we need you to hustle on out of here when the bell rings so we can all meet and talk about you when you're not around. Hope you have a great afternoon. It's beautiful outside, but there's a cold front coming in tonight. Watch out. Stay warm.
Just say sorry.
Sorry, there's an interruption, but I'm like the affirmative side said. They said that Edward de Vere had plays. They had proof of him writing plays. Why would he not want all of his plays underneath his name? Doesn't make sense to me. Like he's getting credit for some plays. Why wouldn't he want credit for all of it? And they also said that he would get in trouble for writing these plays. Why didn't Shakespeare ever get in trouble for having his name on the plays? Like he wrote all of his name or plays underneath his name, which didn't really come to mind to me. I don't know. They also said that Edward de Vere performed in plays. Yeah, everyone kind of participated in plays and all this, all the plays back then. And one other point is, even if Edward de Vere did write Shakespeare's plays, it's still under Shakespeare's name, and why does he still want all the credit for the plays if he did write them, if he didn't want the credit back then? It just doesn't make sense to me. Well, I'm a strong believer that Shakespeare did write his plays and not Edward de Vere or anyone else.
I'll go one more, right?
Yeah.
We have a pair of Hello Kitty keys in the attendance office if anybody is missing them. Hello Kitty keys.
You guys good? Fellas ready?
Yeah. We're in the first episode.
All right, I'm sure. Ready? All right, we are still very strong believers that Edward de Vere was, however, the true author of the Shakespeare plays, because they said that de Vere wasn't known for writing plays, but he was actually known for directing plays back then. And the reason that he didn't want to take credit was because he was royalty, and what it would do is damage his reputation, even though we keep bringing it back up. De Vere's death in 1604, that doesn't necessarily mean that they could not publish the plays later. Just because he died doesn't mean that they couldn't hold on to him, and they were documented later. They said that Shakespeare went to some of the best colleges in the nation. Actually, Edward went to the best colleges. He went to the University of Cambridge and Queen's College. So he was very highly educated, and he knew what he was doing when he was writing these plays, and he was writing freely, and that was okay with him. He didn't want all the credit because he wanted to still be able to write what he wanted to express what he was feeling, and this wouldn't hurt his reputation at all. Edward actually has documented proof of his life. If you look at Shakespeare, there's not as many facts as there is with Edward. Edward, you can find out when and where he was born, you can find out who his parents were, you can find out where and when he attended college, and you can also find out the names of his spouses. If you look at the difference between Edward de Vere and William Shakespeare came from he was the son of a glove maker, and Edward de Vere was in royalty. So you can see why he wouldn't want to damage his reputation by writing plays that was actually known for lower class. And this is why we believe that Edward de Vere is the true author.
Are you guys ready? Yep.
Yeah, here we go.
All right, so in conclusion to this long debate, I'm still a Shakespeare supporter, and here's the reason why. Colton just said that William Shakespeare don't have no documents out there that talk about his past. Well, this document right here says he was born in April 1564, and he was the oldest son of John Shakespeare. And actually, his father was a trader and a landowner, not a glove.
Hi, Terry.
And I'd also like to say that he never wanted any of the credit for his writing. But why today is there people trying to give him credit? He should have said something that he didn't want credit before he died. It would at least put everything to rest. And in conclusion, I'd just like to state my 3 main points. Plays were made after de Vere died. This guy Shakespeare was really educated, you know. But like Reece said, anyone can be educated. But Shakespeare was a very different person. So Shakespeare wrote his plays, and that's it.
All right, fellas. Good debate. Good debate versus losing.
Turn it off.
Good debate.